What's Biden going to do with guns and Second Amendment? Is there going to be a buyback? You know, as president, Biden will, they say, Second Amendment, he will ban the manufacture and sale of assault weapons and high-capacity magazines, reinstate the Obama-Biden policy to keep guns out of the hands of certain people unable to manage their affairs for mental reasons, which President Trump reversed. Biden will enact legislation prohibiting an individual who has been convicted of a misdemeanor hate crime or received an enhanced sentence for misdemeanor because of hate or bias in its commission from purchasing or possessing a firearm, and the online sale of firearms and ammunitions. Biden will enact legislation to prohibit all online sales of firearms, ammunition, kits, and gun parts. Let me read that one more time. And the online sale of firearms and ammunitions. Biden will enact legislation to prohibit all online sales of firearms, ammunition, kits, and gun parts. So, you know, Mike, obviously you're in this world. This is what you do. As a Navy SEAL, now you're training dogs and you're one of the best at it. You know, people, I think you were on 60 Minutes. I don't know what it was years ago when they did a show on you with 60 Minutes. Yeah. 2014, 2012, 13 when they did that. Yeah. What are your thoughts? What do you think is going to happen with the Biden administration?
Well, so to me, there's a couple of things that it kind of depends on, which is, first and foremost, is whether or not the Senate remains in Republican majority. And I think that's really the biggest key to whether or not he has the ability to do any of these things, because through or via executive order, I'm not aware or of the understanding that he can even do that by himself. So to me, that's I think it just highlights how important the Georgia race is. And I also think, even if the tables were turned, I think an all Republican government would be equally slanted that way, and not a good way. I think balance, having at least one of the three branches of government should be opposed. So that's first and foremost. But from an industry standpoint, that's devastating if that does happen. I mean, in terms of canceling jobs and curbing markets, the firearm and ammo industry is pretty significant in this country, as most people are aware. So, if he tries to do that, he's going to create a lot of enemies, ones that he probably already has. But I think that's going to have impacts on people that are maybe a little bit unforeseen in some of the support roles or transportation or just the supporting mechanisms of the firearm and ammunition industry, because it's not just that. There's gear, there's training courses, there's hunting lodges. I mean, there's a lot of subsequent industries that I think are going to be impacted by that. But to me, what's frustrating about it is this is coming from a guy that the two most famous kind of SOPs, if you will, the standard operating procedures, is grab a double-barrel shotgun and blast it in the air, and then also saying, why don't you just shoot the guy in the leg? Like, both of those things highlight just how woefully disconnected he is from people that carry that for a living. And I have strong opinions about this government-wise across the board, is that one of the biggest problems I think this country has is that so many of our high-level decisions are being made by people that know absolutely nothing about them. And it's not just firearms, it's everything. Whether it's transportation, it's energy, it's foreign policy, it's firearms, I mean, you name it. Is that, you've got people making decisions about things that they just don't know anything about. And I think, as it relates to firearms, if you want to understand, not just how they work, but the impacts that they have on society and the principles with which people that carry them for a living adhere to, you should ask them. Same thing with, say, Border Patrol, is that, you should ask Border Patrol, hey, we want the border secured. You tell us what you need to do that. On firearms, you should talk to police officers and to professional soldiers, people that carry firearms for a living, and ask them what they think. And I think more policies need to be driven by subject matter experts and not people that just think that they know what the deal is. And I think that that's the case here.
Yeah, I think it's a perfect segue for where I can chime in on this. Speaking of asking the experts, I've been guilty of acting, and in my opinion, rightfully so, very emotionally on the gun issue. I'm from Miami, South Florida. Over the last few years, we saw what happened in Parkland. I know the parents of kids who have gone to school there, Parkland, and literally kids were murdered. The nightclub in Orlando where the guy went in there and just shot up a gay club. Sandy Hook was just so sad for me. I mean, I remember, I don't know any of those kids. They were kindergartners. What was that? Under Obama administration, obviously. That was in 2013, I want to say. I just remember crying, just like, what the hell happened here? Obama said that was the angriest he's ever been during his tenure as presidency. So what's my point of saying all this? That I've been guilty of saying, we got to do something about the guns. This is fucking ridiculous. This is ridiculous. But I'm not an expert on guns. Like, this is not my wheelhouse. But as just an American citizen, seeing what happened. I mean, obviously Las Vegas, mass murders over there, and Columbine, the list goes on and on and on. So as just an American who gets emotional, and I think everyone should when mass murders happen, I've been guilty of saying, well, we got to do something about the guns. We got to do something about the guns. We got to do something about the guns. So where do you find the balance in being a weapons expert, former Navy SEAL, someone who knows their stuff, to someone who's just like obviously acting emotional, just being like, I'm not saying that the Second Amendment should be repealed, nothing ridiculous like that, but, mentally handicapped people or people like accused of a hate crime here or any of these issues that Biden's pointing out. What's the answer, I guess, is what I'm saying.
So to me, it's actually pretty simple, is that, first of all, you said it, is that emotion is being brought into it. And that's the first way to screw up a decision is to let emotion drive it. Mm-hmm. So that's number one. Number two is that there are so many other statistics that nobody's talking about, and that doesn't justify, deaths via guns. But from a data standpoint, when you're talking about quote unquote mass shootings, you're talking about less than 2,000 people a year. Now, if one of those 2,000 people is your son, or a niece or a nephew or whatever, somebody that you know very well, that's gonna give you some heartburn. But take malpractice as an example, or for a tit for tat, because malpractice, is 10 or 20-fold the amount of people that die. Who is screaming about something needs to be done to where there are more, mitigation protocols put in place to keep people in hospitals from dying? Nobody's talking about that. Opioid deaths. 50,000 or so Americans every single year die from opioid deaths. Why isn't the liberal left screaming about something has to be done? Because a lot of those are kids, or teenagers, or people that get into their parents' Percocets. Nobody's saying a word about that. Tit for tat, number for number, swimming pools, right? On average, about 3,500 kids drown in swimming pools every single year. Do you need a swimming pool? No, you don't. Nobody's saying anything about that. More kids die drowning in swimming pools than they do in mass shootings. Now, that's not to discount the fact that kids shouldn't be shot up in schools. So that's the first thing, is that there's a huge disparity between the selective outrage of people as it relates to data, and there are dozens of data points that are far more drastic and worth worrying about than kids being killed by mass shootings. In the last 4 years, how many mass shootings have you seen covered in the media under a Trump presidency as it relates to the 8 years of Obama? Very, very few. Why is that? I don't know. What I can say is that it doesn't seem like it's A, just a coincidence, but B, and I think more importantly, is that the history of this nation is built on our ability to exercise that freedom, that right in terms of bearing arms. But if you look at say back 60, 70 years ago, you could order weapons from Sears and have them mailed to you. It wasn't uncommon even back as early as the 70s, where kids would have rifles in shotguns in racks in their trucks in the parking lots. There were no problems.
At high schools, or where?
In high schools.
Oh, wow.
Not the high school you went to. He's just talking high school.
Probably not in South Florida. But a lot of high schools taught weapon safety.
Western High, maybe.
Taught weapon safety. So to me, the two biggest factors are society, and I'm not blaming one.
Say that one more time. That we spoke over you. A lot of high schools taught?
Yeah, many high schools back in the 70s and early 80s, up until about 30 or 40 years ago, taught weapon safety in high school.
That's freaking sick.
Right, and so
why wouldn't you do it?
Right. So, well, I mean, it's like with anything. You teach how to be offensive and defensive in terms of driving. You go through driver's ed.
Why? Do you think that's something they need to bring back into the high school?
1,000%.
You know what? For me,
weapons
training. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, it's a piece of equipment. It's a tool, no different than anything else. Because I'll tell you right now,
they teach how to use a banana, no? Like with condoms. They teach how to use how to put a condom on a banana.
Oh, the old banana in the tailpipe trick.
Here you go, buddy.
Thanks Hawthorne, for the hand cream.
So,
The old banana in the
So I mean,
tailpipe.
just like with everything, is you need to understand what the piece of equipment is, and there's let's say that this table has a hammer, a chainsaw, a firearm, keys to a rider truck. Every one of those things can be used to kill people. So even in the hypothetical where you had the ability to completely remove every single firearm in this country, okay, well I'll use a hammer. Imagine any grown man walking into a school with a 24-inch steel chainsaw and no firearms with the ability to defend against that guy. I mean, that's an absurd amount of damage that could be done with that. You could rent a truck and drive it through a parking lot or through a schoolyard recess area during recess and do a ridiculous
You're saying anything
amount
can
of
be
damage.
lethal if you put your
Of
mind
course.
to it.
Yeah, it's the intent, right? It's the tool. Again, just you could reduce it down to the surgeon.
But guns obviously are the best weapon.
I don't think so. I mean,
Really?
I mean, let me ask you this: Do you think, right, with no training, would you be better with a firearm or with a truck? Right? Let's say there's a festival or it's the Fort Worth Stock Show, right? So if you had an AR-15 and body armor and all your mags jammed and ready to go, even though you I'm assuming don't know a whole lot about how to operate that, or you jump in an F-250, right, with a lead foot, and you decide I'm going to go mow some people down at the Fort Worth Stockyards or the Texas State Fair. How many people are you going to kill with each
Gotcha.
of
I
those?
see what you're saying.
Right, so it's not about the firearm itself.
Well, hopefully
at
there's
all.
like protocol in place. Like, for instance,
Well,
you could put
but that's
guards
my,
up,
right,
guardrails that you can't drive through. A gun you can take.
Right,
to
but that's
anywhere.
Wait a minute. There's a lot of places you drive a car that there's a lot of traffic. If you really wanted to kill somebody, you could easily do it.
and here's the reality is that just like at TSA, right, is that at some point there isn't a protocol, there isn't a mitigation factor. You're creating choke points where if all these barriers, well, guess what? People have to line up to get through those barriers or those checkpoints. There's always going to be an area that's a weak spot where if you wanted to kill a ton of people in a variety of mechanisms, you would be able to do it. So while I understand the emotion-driven outrage that people have because it's face value, you see a picture of a 7-year-old cute little girl, that got shot in the back of the head, while studying English. Like, that's a shitty deal. There's no two ways about it.
Yeah.
But what you don't see is the 3,500 kids that drowned. Where is their picture? Where is the 50,000 kids, that died from opioid overdoses that nobody's showing their picture or having a ticker that says this is how many kids have died from opioids on every single media channel. When you talk about just that disparity, it's enormous. And the last thing I want to bring up, and then I'll get off my soapbox, is human trafficking. All right, there's an average of about 200,000 kids in this country that get roped into sex slave or human trafficking. That's 200,000, right? Where is anybody's outrage with that? Where are their pictures all over the media? Where is hey, there was 3,700 kids that went missing today on the side of CNN or on the ticker? That's nowhere. Why not? Are those kids not important? They are, but they're not on there. So why not? So you've got a number of not that 2,000 is a small number. And again, if it was my daughter, would I be upset? Of course I would. But when you contrast it to all of the other problems and you look at the bandwidth that's dedicated to stopping this problem when there's huge, far bigger fish to fry, to me it's a lost cause. And I think there's also enough people in this country that are absolutely gonna give you the come and take it mentality of saying, who's going to enforce it? Go ahead and ban them. Come get them and see what happens. Because whether it's you or it's a politician, somebody that decides that they're going to say, these are illegal. Are you going to go take them from a guy like me that's barricaded in my house? How many police officers are going to show up and get smoked in a situation like that before the guys that you're tasking with enforcing it are saying, you know what, I'm not doing this shit anymore. I got a family to feed. So it's a much, much more difficult task than just making a rule. If it was as easy as making a rule, you wouldn't need to do it because there's already a bunch of rules that say shooting people in those capacities is already a felony. So
What's your take on all this?
No.
Pat?
What's your take? It's not my take. I want to hear from you. What is your response to what he just said? Don't worry about what I have.
Nothing.
I'm on the same page with him. I want to know your
You're on the
take.
exact same page. Okay.
Based on what part of what he said can you argue?
I'm not trying to argue. I'm
But
trying to learn.
I want to know for somebody like you, based on what he just said the last 8 minutes, how are you processing what he said?
I'm 0% trying to argue with an expert on this. I have more questions than points on this. Straight up. I told you what my point was initially, that it's very easy to get emotional, like you said.
Right.
A 7-year-old getting shot up in English class.
Right,
Who sits there? And so I guess here's my question to you: how can you take the emotion out of it? I get like the the opioid thing. Like, well, if you're 16 years old and you choose to down a bunch of pills, you made that decision. If you're sitting in English class or you're in a nightclub or you're sitting in Vegas, you're not making a decision to take a bunch of pills. You're just living your life. So I'm asking you, like, how can we take the emotions out of this? How can we use more logic? And most importantly, what protocols can we do? Because I feel like this
Before
is
you answer that,
going in circles.
Before you answer that, if you're watching this, you agree 100% with what Mike said, put thumbs up. If you disagree, put thumbs down. If you disagree, thumbs down. Explain why you disagree with what Mike just said the last 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes. Go ahead, Mike.
So to me, it's not about my level of expertise on firearms. To me, that's completely irrelevant, right? To me, it's 100% about I have the ability to remove the emotion before I start thinking of it, and that has to be self-regulated, right? Is that I can't make you control your own emotions, and that's one of the biggest negative byproducts of cancel culture, is that when you say that offends me or I don't like to see that or whatever, what I don't understand how people don't realize is you are by default handing over the control of your emotions to somebody else. Like that is a weak position to have, right?
Totally agree.
Right, and so this is no different to me, is that, don't be spoon-fed by the media and just say, well, that's on TV, so that's what I should be worrying about. Like, that's step one. Number two is think objectively about everything. Again, like, I'm not a pool expert, right? I know how to swim. I'm not a swimming pool expert. I'm damn sure not a brain surgeon, but I can look at data, and I think that really is kind of the crux of all of this, is that look at data. Because data is not an opinion. It's not a gray area. There's nothing to argue about it. Is that this number of people died from this number of people died from that, and then just like ER nurses and doctors do, is they triage, is to say, okay, here are our 10 biggest problems in this country. Number one is heart disease. Let's talk about that because that's killing the most people. Again, it does not trivialize the fact that all these other people are dying from these other things, but if you're trying to get the most bang for your buck, it has to be done that way, and that can only be done by people that have the ability to regulate their own selves that way. Politically
speaking, we see here in another story that they freaking run out of ammo. Gun sales are up, and there's not enough bullets to fill the guns. And you brought up, under the Trump administration, we're not seeing as many sensationalized media stories. Well, I think, here's my question, though. I think under an Obama administration, and certainly what we're seeing under a Biden forthcoming administration, gun sales skyrocket. Like, you talk about the industry. You brought up, like, how many people work in this industry and jobs and all that good stuff. Under Trump, sales have gone down significantly.
For firearms?
For fire, yeah, it's.
I'd love, again. I don't know the
when
data.
a Democrat comes into office.
Do you have the stats?
Yeah, I would. Do
you have the stats? Because I have data right here
over
next to me.
Over the last year, gun sales have gone up significantly.
To the roof. Like, you're talking about being sold out, and they have nothing.
Since the election.
And by the way, here's what you got to be thinking about.
2 million guns.
What's magical about this is he's saying end the online sale of firearms and ammunition. Biden will enact legislation to prohibit online sales of firearms, ammunition, kits, and gun parts. The online gun and ammunition industry in U.S., statistically, according to ibisworld.com, is $2 billion market size. There's 2,473 businesses who do that, with 12,326 employees who do that, 12,326 jobs who do that. So the question I got for you is a different question. I know what you're asking him. I want to ask you, based on what he explained and he reasoned with you, you have the ability to reason. How are you processing the information of what he just said to you?
No, I'm processing it very logically and with math. Like you pointed out, the swimming pool example. More people die, more kids die in a swimming pool, than getting shot up. So again, I started this entire conversation off with it's very easy to act emotionally in these situations. If you don't have emotions when kids get shot up in Sandy Hook, go check yourself into a doctor, buddy.
But that shouldn't drive your decisions on how to fix it. Like, be pissed off.
But would you agree that something can be fixed? Like, for instance, the big debate after Vegas was the bump stock debate. They stopped the sale of bump stocks, whatever the hell bump stocks is.
Right. So, I mean, again, that makes
bump stock so people can see what it is, because Adam needs to know what a bump stock is.
Banning bump stocks and suppressors and a certain round of magazines, all those things do is make, and no offense, but they make people like you feel better about what their politicians are not doing. It's really all it is. And I'll tell you why, is that air rifles, as an example, this is something a lot of people, even in the gun industry, aren't that familiar with, that are not serialized, they're not regulated by the ATF, but they have up to 50 caliber size munitions that they can shoot with. These are, there's no gunpowder. You can make the bullets yourself with a 3D printer or a basic tool and die shop. You can machine these types of weapons. It's completely unregulated, but it wouldn't matter if it was, because they're all. It's like the MacGyver doing shit in your kitchen. Is that all of these materials are readily available enough to be able to make them, and so. That's half of it, right? Is that by trying to ban this stuff, it's not going to fix anything. The other thing is that alcohol, right? Prohibition. Did that work? No, it didn't. Why didn't it? Because people decided, you know what? It's worth, even though I may spend 10 years in prison, I like drinking booze that much that I'm willing to risk it, right?
I'm going to make some moonshine in my tub.
Right. So to the homies. But that's just gotcha. Booze, right? So now imagine you're scared for your life. You've got a crazy ex or you live in a neighborhood where it's getting shot up nonstop. Is that you're going to do what you have to do to protect your family. If you were to ban, and again looking at data, if you want to ban something that's going to try to make an impact, you'd need to ban handguns. 85–90% of all deaths related to firearms are committed by handguns. So nobody's talking about that either. That's by far the biggest market share in terms of people that die. But my last point is that let's just say hypothetically that you had the ability with an all-democratic government to ban every firearm in existence. You have to get rid of the ones that are already here, but also what you're going to do is create an immediate, overnight, and incredibly lucrative black market for firearms coming through Mexico. Right? It's very easy to get. You want to talk about military weapons grade? I mean, they have explosives, they have rockets, they have grenades, they do some gnarly stuff down there. They don't, guns are basically illegal there. They have no problem getting all that stuff. Well, if they can get people and drugs in this country almost unfettered, which the liberal policy is about to change, where they're going to have the gates wide open at this point. If you don't think that banning guns is now going to create a cartel network that's now funneling weapons into this country, you are incredibly naive, because it will, because they're businessmen, right? They work in things that they make money in, not just drugs. So to me, it's a lost cause. Can you do something about it? Yes, you can. What you can do is teach kids how to respect and operate firearms, and also use a nuclear family setup to give kids some semblance of respect for life and respect for everything. To me, that is the difference between now and 70 years ago, when guns were way easier to get a hold of. I'll tell you right now, 70 years ago, our grandparents didn't have gun safes. They didn't have fingerprint activated handgun safes under their bed. They had shit laying around. They had it in the glove box,
in the glove box,
all over the place. But what they did is they taught every one of their kids to not mess with it, the same way that I'm assuming. Do you have kids?
No, not yet.
All right, so I have kids. You have kids, right? Do you have a kitchen block with knives in your kitchen?
Plenty.
Do you have power tools in your garage?
Plenty.
Right. So do you let your kids mess with those, or do you teach them to respect them?
Exactly.
Could they kill each other with the kitchen block full of knives?
24/7.
Could they grab a hole saw out of the garage and punch a 4-inch circular hole in their brother's cranium? Yes, they could, but they don't, because you teach them not to mess with that stuff and how to respect it. So that's what needs to happen.
But by the way, you see, this last 15-minute discourse, the entire country needs to listen to. This last 15 minutes, it's so powerful, this last 15 minutes, on the angle it went. And by the way, I want to continue on this, because since we're already Good Mother, let me give a quick shout out to Good Mother. She's given $20 twice. First was saying Happy Thanksgiving. Second time she said the problem is the mommies in the government trying to take care of people, and the daddies letting them destroy our country. That's what she had to say. And then we had another person that just came saying $5. Seriously, children, quit the soy boy nonsense. Grow up and become real men if you want adults to take you seriously. Okay, so that was by Also good mother. She's still going at it. So let me go back to what you asked
Good
about.
mother
what we can,
sounds like a
what
like
what
a man.
what we can.
Cross-dresser.
She actually is a woman. She sends messages on Instagram. She's probably sent you messages as well. Good mother. Why don't you send a message to Adam so he knows who you are?
Send me an email at soyboy@soyboy.com.
You asked what we can do about it. You asked what we can do about it, and he said a couple different things. One thing you got to be thinking about is the following: like everybody here grew up with a parent who had what's the word? Who was a stickler about something, right? What was your mom or dad a stickler about? What were they sticklers about? Like, it's the weirdest
Do the best
thing.
job possible.
No. I'm talking about like never leave your shoes outside. Why are you leaving the soap over here? You have to do this with you.
Turn the lights off.
Turn the lights off. What else was it? What things did you have? What did
Clean the freaking dishes, buddy.
What did
Do
your
the dishes.
parents lose their minds over? What did your parents lose their minds over? Do you remember what it was? What was yours?
Not closing doors.
Not closing doors.
Waking my dad up when he was taking a nap.
Waking your dad up when he's taking a nap. Because that was pretty crazy, right? What else is it? Tell me. Turn off the lights. What do you have, Eric? Losing.
Every time I had to do a task, if I didn't do it right the first time, he would get really upset. He'd be like, do it over again, and don't ever fucking make me check it again.
That's your
Do it right
dad.
the first
Shout
time.
out to your dad, man. I like your dad already.
Yeah.
How about yourself? Anything you had? Because you come from a very loving family. But
Yeah, don't run away when it's time to whoop your ass. Is my dad. My dad was an
Take
aggressive
an ass
dude.
beating, right?
You're gonna take this ass beating.
here's the point.
Do not run away.
Here's the
Take
point.
it.
The point I'm trying to make to you is now as adults, there are certain things our parents did that haunt us. Okay?
Yeah.
My mom would say, if you bite your nails and you drop them on the floor, your parents are going to fight. Do you want mommy and daddy to fight? My mom would say, if you chewed gum after the dark, you chewed the devil's ear. Now think about this.
Excuse me?
I'm 42 years old today, right? I chew gum at night. I have to throw it away just because my mom told me when I was 6 years old, if you chew gum after the dark, you chewing the devil's ear. Who the hell says stuff like that? An Armenian mother does is what they do, right? They scare the shit out of you. Yeah. What's the point? The same way our parents scared the hell out of us is what the media is doing. Whatever the media chooses to make their main MO to drive nonstop emotion out of you and I, they're going to do it. It doesn't matter what it is. If it's to say, are you seeing what these people are doing with the guns? All it takes is one incident to say, this is why we have to ban guns. This is why we have to ban guns. I've never seen anything about pools. I've never seen anything about driving cars. I've never seen anything about knives. I've never seen anything about opioids. You don't hear it when he's talking about it. And I think the part that you made a lot of sense is the following. This is something, Adam, I think you ought to agree with. You have a show called Sauce Talks Money, and you do a great job with your show that you have Sauce Talks Money, okay? And you have certain principles, 6 principles that got you from being a party guy in Miami to being a millionaire, okay, in your 30s. And those 6 tools, can those 6 things help anybody out? Can anybody learn from that?
Agreed.
Now, Adam, let me ask you this. How many kids in high school should learn those 6 things? Like, which one of those 6 things do you think they need to start teaching at 9th grade, 8th grade, 7th?
All of them.
All
6
of them.
things. Yeah,
okay,
of
so now
course.
watch this. Here's stuff that we don't learn about in school. We don't learn about marriage. We don't learn about what it is to be married to somebody that you got married for the wrong reasons. We don't learn about taxes. Nobody tells us how to pay the least amount of taxes possible. All they talk about is rich people don't pay taxes. Why don't you teach me how to pay the least amount of taxes? Like teaching somebody how to get the least amount of speeding tickets or how to get the least amount of felonies, misdemeanors. There's nothing wrong with teaching me how to pay the least amount of taxes by going out there and starting a business and having the ability to write off. They don't teach you about money. And they don't teach you about guns. Why don't you teach me about guns? Why don't you sit there and train me? My challenge would be, if we ran a country, here's what I would want. If we're running a country, if we are running a country together, my ideal situation would be, the number I would be tracking is how many people we have well-trained. I want well-trained kids. You don't want to join the military? No problem. You do have to take a gun class. You don't want to go in the U.S. Army? I'm all about some boys that are undecided like me to go in the military. I think it'll straighten you up, and it did to me. Army is one of the best decisions I ever made. You served the military. Thank you for your service. You were in the Marines. If I don't go in the military, I'm not Patrick BetDavid today. I'm somebody else. But if you don't want to go in the military, no problem. You got to take a 90-day course on how to use guns and how to use them properly and how to learn. Go learn it. Basic stuff. Why? Because the more trained people we have, the better it is. When I got my license, driver's license, we take a what? A driver's license course. You get a permit, then you get a gun at 16, and then you get a car at 16 years old if you choose to do, right? I think the stuff Mike talked about here were so powerful. The part that concerns me with all the things that we covered here today is everything is now about messaging, right? You know how that one video shows 100 different news stations, they're all using the same script. You ever seen that video that shows all these different guys using the same script? So they have a certain messaging board that goes as, guys, this is the line we're going to use. This is the line we're going to use, and everybody uses it, right? Okay. Buying back guns. We're going to pay to buy back guns. We're going to get rid of, these semi-automatic weapons, which they have no clue what is a semi-automatic weapon, right? We're going to try to get rid of bumps. We're going to try to get rid of all this stuff. This is the consensus based on all the media that comes together. This is what they talk about, and they say, here's what. My question is going to be, what is really going to happen if they decide to push hardcore to do get guns back and buying back? What do you think the people are going to do in America? Do you think they're just going to say, okay, cool, let me just give it back to them? Or do you think there's going to be a reaction?
So I think it's going to be measured based on how into them you are. For the average guy that has, maybe a pistol and maybe a shotgun and is like, man, I don't want to get wrapped up into, pushing the envelope and whatever, he'll probably turn them in. Then there's going to be the people at the other end of the spectrum where they're fanatics about it. And I'll tell you myself as an example, like there's a few guns that I have that aren't worth having anymore, that if they said, hey, we're doing a buyback, I'd be like, sweet, here's the 5 ones I don't give a shit about. You can take them back and I'll take my $1,000 or what.
How many guns do you have, Mike?
Enough. We'll just put it at that. But
more than a few dozen.
No, I'm not. I'm not a fanatic about it. I mean, I have a handful of pistols, a handful of rifles, a handful of shotguns.
But what do you think about these people that have 30, 40, 50, 100 freaking guns?
Well, I mean, same thing with watches, with shoes, with vehicles, with houses. To me, America should be this. It should be free, right? And whether or not you think I should own anything is no more your business than whether or not I think you should own whatever the hell you own. I don't care what you own. I think you should own whatever you want. To me, freedom. And I've said this on a number of times, people are going to laugh. I think freedom is like being pregnant, right? And that sounds ridiculous, but the reality of it is you can't be kind of pregnant or mostly pregnant or almost completely pregnant, right? You either are or you're not. And with great freedom comes great responsibility. It's big boy rules, and you've got to learn how to manage that, right? But I would much rather live in a society where shit's dangerous, and people have the autonomy to make decisions the same way that I think kids should be raised, is give them the ability to make mistakes. Don't micromanage them and decide everything for them, because it builds resentment and it creates sneakiness. For anybody out there that has kids, the harder you are on them, what happens? They find a way around it the same way they do in prison, the same way they do in SEER school, the same way they do in boot camp. What's not allowed in prison? Cell phones, drugs, cigarettes, ass rape. Guess what happens in prison? All of those things.
Damn.
Right? So well, bear with me.
Yeah.
Right? We live in a society where we have elements of our government that are trying to say we're going to control you as stringently as prison, but guess what? If in a prison-like environment you can't keep those things out of prison, where it's as controlled as you can possibly control a group of human beings, how on earth do you logically try to reason with people and think that you're realistically going to be able to do that in a somewhat free society? It's not going to happen.
It's the prohibition moonshine analogy right there. Like when there's a will, there's a way.
Right. Or let's take meth, right? Methamphetamines. All 50 states, methamphetamines is a federal felony, right? Well, except Oregon now at a certain amount. The other 49. All right, you with $300 at any gas station in any state within about 25 minutes, you can get a hold of some. Right? Well, it's illegal. It's a federal felony. You'll spend a lot of time in prison if you have it, but it's still that easy to get a hold of. What makes anybody think that guns are going to be any different that way? Like if people are that into drugs or to booze or to whatever it is that they want, ivory. Ivory's illegal. People have ivory. I mean, it's just pick anything that is illegal and show me where it actually doesn't exist. I challenge anybody listening out there. Show me one area, prison or otherwise, where something is a banned federal felony, where with a few $100s and a couple hours of your free time that you can't get a hold of it at anywhere in this country.
In a democratic society, I assume you mean. I mean, obviously.
Even in a socialist or communist, or take China, it's the same thing. You think black markets don't exist there? Like they run a way tighter ship than we do. Guess what? You can get anything in China. Right, so show me, even like nobody wants to live like China, but even in China, you can get anything there. Right, so how are you going to do that here? You're not. Human nature dictates that people will find a way. I'm going to use another Jeff Goldblum
No
quote.
question about that.
Life will find a way. This is now.
This is Jurassic Park. You're bringing Jurassic Park.
I'm doing it
in
again. Maybe
There
I got
we
a
go.
thing for Jeff Goldblum.
I
don't
think
know.
you had a Jeff Goldblum reference recently with your
I
glasses.
did.
Where are
You
your
got,
glasses?
there's a resemblance there a little bit.
No. We're Pat's better looking
With the
than Jeff Goldblum.
glasses.
Yeah, where are the glasses at?
With the glasses, maybe somewhere.
Well,
around.
listen,
but go ahead. You were
let-
saying.
No, but that's life will find a way. People
Yeah.
will find a way. I mean, human beings are the most ingenuitive species by a lot. That's why we're where we're at, right? But that applies to everything, not just for the good, for the bad. Look at prison, look at gangs, look at POW camps in Vietnam. Look at the shit that some of those guys were able to pull off, right? Being tortured every day, being chained to a wall, and they still managed to pass notes to each other. I mean, people will find a way around everything. It's just to me the answer is. It's the adage, you catch more flies with honey than you do vinegar. Like, instead of trying to outlaw everything, teach people how to do it right. Mm-hmm. I mean, and that's with everything. It's not just with guns. It's with how to conduct yourself, like Pat was saying, like how to do taxes, how to treat your spouse, how to do basic human things that you should learn how to do that people aren't being taught in elementary and high school.
Well, look, let me say, Mike, I actually listened. I used the 2 ears on my
emotional?
head. No, not emotional. I took this segment and this opportunity to learn something here, and I appreciate what you have to say, and it's opened my mind on this topic for sure.
Well, I appreciate it.
So much respect for laying out.
By the way, good mother gave you $5, and she said, "Leave Adam alone. He's at least asking questions because he's curious." So good mother's on your side.
Do you feel like I'm jumping
not
on
looking
you?
for sides.
Oh
I'm
my
trying
God,
to be
good
on
mother is trying to support
you,
you here, and
good
you're
mother.
taking shots at her. And
Good mother, I'm not jumping on Adam. We're just talking. Do you feel
Yeah,
like
we're
I'm
doing
jumping?
good. No, not even a little bit. We're having a
by the way,
respectful conversation.
honestly, this has been
Respect.
such great banter on this topic. But let's talk about what you were talking about off camera, regarding when's the last time we heard anything about terrorism, ISIS. Why don't you talk about that a little bit?
Well, I found it interesting that leading up to the 2016 election, we were inundated with ISIS. I mean, again, it's what the media decides to show you, right? And I think that speaks volumes, right? Is that a scared public, the masses being frightened by something, makes them tend to vote or at least have the opinion of certain people can handle it better. And I think that was probably a tactic. It was pretty often where, on nightly news, pick a program where you would see, a map of Syria, Iraq, and there's, red and green versus, what ISIS holds versus not or whatever. And now 4 years or almost 4 years into the Trump presidency, when was the last time, whether it's leading up to the election or even in the last couple of years, where any of the media has ever portrayed any negative aspect to what's going on foreign policy-wise or ISIS terrorist-wise? There's been zero. To me, that's an interesting thing, because the 2016 election, like most of what we were talking about going into it, and 2012 even more so, that drove a lot of the debates, a lot of the policy, a lot of people's voting positions was foreign policy, and now it's basically void. The media is void of any foreign policy discussions whatsoever in the last couple of years, and to me that's worth talking about.
Regarding ISIS, you're saying?
Regarding everything, I mean, because there's been attacks in France, where terrorists have gone into cathedrals and sliced the throats of.
Well, that was very recent.
Right, or
that
even,
was covered.
Not
I heard,
really.
I heard all about that.
On what channel?
I mean, that was out there a few weeks ago. Out there on the AP for sure.
How much time was dedicated to that versus everything else that you hear?
Well, let me just say this. Clearly, would you agree that ISIS and the caliphate was a way bigger problem in 2015 than it is now?
Well,
I thought that was and kudos to Trump.
No, well,
he figured it out.
No,
I don't even know if it's necessarily a media thing more than just
for sure
the actual fact thing where we defeated ISIS.
Well, let me ask you this.
For the most part.
Back in 2015, how was your life impacted by terrorism other than what you heard on the media versus now?
Valid point. I don't think most people in America are getting beheaded on the weekend, in a in an ISIS beheading.
But just like,
but it was more prevalent, more rampant 5 years ago.
I think you heard about it a lot more. If you think that there isn't still a bunch of terrible shit happening in Iraq and Syria and Kurdistan and everywhere else right now, it is.
Dude, Mike, no freaking doubt. Was there drama going on in Afghanistan and Iraq and Yemen, and is there still fights being going on? No doubt. But are you saying that over the last 5 years we've done nothing to defeat ISIS?
No, we absolutely have.
Okay.
My point is that what you're hearing about it, though, is almost non-existent. The same way, what are the stats that now all of a sudden that you were like, holy shit, I wasn't aware of that? Swimming pools, right?
Yeah.
Opioid deaths. Those are all things that have been taking place year after year. Human trafficking, same thing. You haven't heard about any of that. Those data-wise impact our society and our children, the next generation, far greater than coronavirus does. You know, from a lethality standpoint. I mean, hands down.
Children, for sure.
Right. So,
Right.
But you're not hearing about that. You didn't hear about that.
So
in the media.
is your
That's
ultimate
happening
point here that a lot of this is media sensationalism?
100% it is.
Okay.
You know, you would have known about 200,000 human traffickers. You would have known about 3,500 kids drowning in school.
Why doesn't the media cover human trafficking? You brought that up a few times. Why is that not a topic? That doesn't seem like a political topic.
I mean, from my perspective, I think that there are enough people that are in the hierarchies, the upper echelons of hierarchy at some of these media groups that are complicit to it because they're probably involved in it. That's what I think.
Hold on, back up.
Yeah.
Unpack that last part for me.
It's exactly what I said. To me, I can't come up or rationalize any other excuse as to why that with that kind of data that nobody is saying anything about it other than the fact that they're at least okay with it. I mean, you tell me why it is. I would pose the same question. Those numbers, I mean, look it up, right? It's on government websites, the amount of people that are trafficked. And in fact, I took a screenshot of it on the way over here.
But is it? Are they talking about it? Are they talking about it? Is it across the board? Meaning, are they bringing it up more on Newsmax and OAN and Fox versus CNN and MSNBC?
You don't hear it on any of them.
So it's not necessarily like if you're a liberal Democrat, you're into raping kids, but if you're a conservative, you're not. Like
no, which tells me that
you're saying that it's just up at the top. Power begets.
I don't know how else you would explain it.
Is this QAnon stuff or what is this?
I don't know anything about it. I'm not a QAnon guy. I'm not a tinfoil hat guy. I'm not an Alex Jones guy. To me, I'm an emotional patriot as it relates to where my emotions get fed into it. It's being passionate about this country.
What is that tinfoil stuff with the QAnon stuff?
I don't know. I mean, you're asking the wrong guy. Like I legitimately, I don't know shit about it.
Okay, gotcha. I'm not.
By the way, maybe Adam needs to go on Alex Jones and they need to do something together.
Why don't we have Alex Jones here on the show one day?
You and Alex would hit it off.
Do you think we can get Alex Jones around here?
I think we just have to make a phone call. We just haven't made that phone call.
What do we call it? 1-800-QAnon? He shows up? How does that work?
Okay. I mean, again, say that. I'd love to see the two of you guys go at it, man. It would be so entertaining.
I have a lot of questions for him.
I'm sure you do.